I'm honored to be presented and just a little nervous about it. I really appreciate your willingness to reschedule me. I apologize. I was supposed to visit. I had reserved the privilege to talk to you just before Pesach, but I had failed to check that with my wife. So I beg your indulgence for having messed up the schedule. But I really am excited to visit with you. I want to spend a few minutes to talk a little bit about Timberland in context of the difficult circumstances that are at hand. And I want to tell you a little bit about how we're coping with them and how we're making our way in the world. But I want to be clear about why I'm going to tell you these stories, because I already know the stories. So what Timberland's doing in the context of economic crisis is interesting, sort of, right? What I hope, though, is that it will be interesting particularly because of the audience, right? These are leaders, Jewish leaders, who indicate by their interest in this class and their interest in the curriculum in general that they want to be involved somewhere in the world of business. And so when you get to be a middle-aged boot salesman, which is what I am at 49 years old, it's really important to be able to visit with much younger, powerful voices that are soon to be heard in the world of commerce, hopefully with a voice of commerce and justice, right? Because so that's why I'm excited and a little nervous to speak to you, because I know my story is relatively irrelevant, except to the extent that it could be useful to you, in which case it was worth making the trip to New York, which is where the Yankees live and things like that. And for a Boston boy, that's a tough thing to do. But Red Sox lost last night, Celtics lost last night. It's all right. I'm going home for Shabbos. Things are going to be all right. We meet in a very interesting moment. Right? If you're just talking business terms, consumers have stopped spending globally. I'm talking about our industry, but not just our industry. The crisis of confidence is paralyzing financial markets. We now have the President of the United States pretending to be an automobile salesman, rewriting willy-nilly bankruptcy law on the basis of political expediency. It's a very, very difficult moment economically, and it's not clear at all how it be okay. It's interesting to see. To me, I ask you to wonder what the same way. It's interesting to see what people do in the context of crisis. You can hear what they say, but then the question is, what do they actually do? For Timberland, this is a very serious storm economically. Our stock is battered. Our market cap, that is to say the value of the equity of our company, which we're the principal shareholders, my family and me, is down from a high of $2.5 billion to about $1 billion. So substantial decrease in the value of the company. Revenues are down, profits are down. In our industry, the entire conversation is not about success or relative failure. It's really about survival. That's the frame of conversation that our competitors. Macy's cuts 10,000 employees, one phone call. Nike announced what they called proactive restructuring of the business, which meant layoffs. Reebok just fired their United States employees, plus or minus. And great brands, I consider Quicksilver, for example. It's a Southern California surfer brand in our space. It's a $2 billion revenue company, relatively profitable company, made a really bad bet. They have debt on their balance sheet, and so their stock's trading at $1.50, down from about 100, and they're literally on bankruptcy watch. But I keep telling the 5,000 or so folks who work at Timberland, we don't make the economy, we don't control the weather, and we're not accountable for choices that other people make. But what we will be held accountable for are the choices that we make. The circumstances are what they are. Some we've created and exacerbated, both as consumers and as business people ourselves. But the circumstances are what they are. The question before us, right, is what do you do? How do you act in the context of those choices? I love the aphorisms. People say crisis builds character. First of all, I don't think it's true on any dimension. I'd say differently. I think crisis reveals character. People act, especially when you run out of time, to intellectually describe what you'd like to do, but you're really up against it. Yet people act against their reflex arc. People show you what they believe. So I think crisis reveals character. So I want to tell you a little bit about 2009, this year at Timberland, through the lens of a third-generation CEO, a guy whose entire wealth is tied up in our stock. As a person who's invested 25 years of my life into building this brand and this business, that's a long time. Hey, how are you doing? Sorry, a Boston friend in the room. I see a friendly face. I just got to say hello to know him. Anyways, I've invested 25 years of my life, and I'm accountable for every bad decision I've ever made. That's what's wonderful about being the CEO, right? You can take a bow if you wish. If that's your style, it's not mine, but that's my own mishigas. What you can't fail to do is be accountable for the failures you've made. And so the number of people who've lost their job in the last 18 months in our space, there's people who leave our company, and there's people that have left our company because we stopped doing parts of the business. We closed down an apparel business in the United States. I have you have your little totems in your room, right? You have posters or you have pictures of family. I have the names of every single person who's lost their job at Timberland because I'm the CEO. And when you shake it and you bake it, I'm accountable for those decisions. And I can't tell you the sun was in my eyes or the economy went bad. That doesn't matter, not to those people, right? To those people, they lost their job because I didn't run the company as well as I needed to. 2009, I can't manage the economy or the weather, but I am accountable for the decisions I make. And it's going to be a difficult year for us financially. That's not a particularly powerful insight, but it's also going to be an historic year at Timberland in terms of our enduring 30-plus year history of aspiring to earn profit responsibly and sustainably. In a time when some might be willing to rationalize a giant step back from what we describe as the mission of our enterprise, which is the synthesis of commerce and justice, our agenda remains centered in the belief that commerce and justice are not antithetical notions, that the job of the CEO is to deliver the quarter. Every 90 days, we're a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. So yesterday, literally yesterday, I got to review the first quarter earnings with Wall Street, right? So every 90 days, I got to be accountable for it. But I also, while we work to serve the shareholder, I know it's not a intellectual point. It's a straightforward pshat. It's very simple. We must be accountable for the affect of our business. We are accountable to the people working the value chain, right? Whether they live in China or they live in the Dominican Republic or they live in the retail store in Soho, right? The sales associate. I'm accountable to them for the dignity that underlies the work that they do. And the fact is, shoes are a big polluting business, right? Leather is fundamentally and intrinsically a byproduct of agriculture. And the agriculture, which is the husbandry that relates to raising cows to make the Shabbos steak, cholent, nobody raises cows for leather. They raise them for beef. But so you tell me, am I responsible for the greenhouse gas emissions that relate to the animal husbandry of cows? I use the leather. It's a derivative product, but I use the leather. We've taken the view we are accountable for it. And so my dad, who is the chairman of the company, still finds this absolutely hysterical. He says, in the list of things that we get to talk about in the history of our brand building, cows and their affect on the atmosphere just wasn't something that was in my mind when we were building the business. And I said, Dad, I don't want to think about it, but I think at the end of the day that the insistence on commerce and justice means you have to think about it. You have to be mindful of your affect, right? You do. It's a at least, let me put it this way. I believe it. I'm not looking for validation. You can call me wrong. If I fail, you sell the stock or don't buy the shoes. This is what I believe, and this is the way we've acted for the last 30 years, and this is the way we're going to act this year too. Now, I could bore you with stories about the investments we're making in citizen service, meaning we have invited all 5,247, yesterday's count, employees to be responsible for, to be accountable for 40 hours of paid time to volunteer in their community. I can tell you that when we started, that usually meant big corporate event where we paint the wall and take a picture, right? 6,000 of your closest friends show up, you paint the wall, big day of community service, nice. It's very, very different now. We've been doing this for 20 plus years now, and most of the people at Timberland now own this notion. It's internalized. And so they show up in small places all around the world. On Earth Day, which is just recently, we served in 100 different countries around the world. That is drop dead cool. That's the notion of citizen service and leverage. That's a leadership model, right? And so we had some guy in Turkey, never been there, right? I don't even know what we do there. We sell some stuff there. We don't buy anything there that I know of. But I got an email from Bob Timberland in Turkey telling me about the Earth Day event. And he said there were 300 of us. So because I'm an accountable CEO, I went by the CFO, our chief financial officer. I said, do we have 300 people in Turkey? And he said, no, we have like a 6-person office. And I said, okay. So then I thought, maybe I got a translation problem here. So I went to whatever this guy's name is, and I read back, tell me about the service event, show me pictures. And he sent me, little JPEGs. My kids have to help me with that stuff because I'm not Mr. Technology. But if you figure out how to open these pictures, there's all these folks. And you know who they are? They're customers, and they're consumers, and they're just citizens. That is powerful. 20 years later, I look myself in the face and I say, you tot up the failures and you look at you look for some sense that you haven't wasted your entire life. And I look at these strangers I'll never meet and never know in Turkey that don't work for Timberland, that were doing service on Earth Day, led by some Timberland person, I don't even know his name. And I think to myself, okay, citizen service has bitten. It has traction at Timberland. So I could bore you with stories about that, but I won't. I could talk to you about what's going on in the factories. And you should ask, because you're all consumers, right? And that means you're powerful, especially when the economy is this rotten. Especially when we're still so oversupplied in choices at the point of sale. You can buy that version of that handsome tie from 50 different guys that want to sell it to you desperately, right? And so you have the right to ask questions. You always did. You just have more leverage now. You can ask a question about where it was made, under what circumstance it was made, what kind of accountability that CEO has to you for that tie. It's up to you, but you have power more than you had before. You always had it, you have more than you have now. Anyways, I don't want to talk about those things. Instead, I want to talk about the environment. I'm glad we coordinated your introduction and my speaking, because I'm going to do the environment thing. Is that all right? Good. Now, I talk about earth keeping. I have 2 slides. If I pull this part off, I'm going to go home and shove a big smile on my face, because I've never done slides in a speech before. But I'm going to try. So I want to tell you about earth keeping at Timberland, because in some ways, it's exactly the point I want to make about 2009. It's cruddy. So what? Right? It's difficult and challenged, but that's what we get paid to figure out, right? That's what you pay. That's what I pay you for. That's what you pay me for as employees of the company, is to figure out the strategy. That's fine. Strategies have to change because the environment changes. The question is, what about principles? Are principles up for negotiation, or aren't they? And I say there's what you say and there's what you do. And so I'm just trying to tell you about what we're doing in terms of earth keeping. Earth keeping is the notion at Timberland that we can make world-class desirable products with a real profit margin while minimizing the carbon footprint that relates to those products. Our commitment to earth keeping drives real innovation. I believe passionately that while the government has a role, and they should absolutely impose a cost of carbon against the economy, the government should do that. Can't be done otherwise. Government should say the cost of carbon's real and it must be priced in. But that's all the government should do. Because when the government tells us how to manage that, and this is my personal opinion, obviously, I think it gets inefficient. Guys like me create wealth when you, citizens or governments, put pressure on me. When you say, look, you have to be accountable for the cost, now figure out how to make a profit. We will. We are at Timberland right now in a cruddy economy, figuring out how to make real profit on environmentally less destructive products. And so if the government ever gets around to putting a carbon cost in, you don't want to be my competitor. Because I figured out how to take automobile tires in landfills. Pernicious problem, right? Take a stab at this, you number jocks out there. How many automobile tires in landfills around the world? I'll give you 3 choices. 100 million, 1 billion, or multiple billions of tires. So it doesn't matter the answer. I just told you the answer is like a huge number. If the least choice was hundreds of millions, it's actually over 1 billion tires in landfills around the world. Now, what does that do to the shoe business? Nothing. Everything. In this world of collaboration that you spoke to, I'm minding my own business. I rarely mind my own business. I was at the moment, probably, I don't know what I was doing. I had a down second, and I got a phone call, and you don't know me, so you're going to misunderstand this at first, but I'm going to make it be okay in the end. I got a phone call, and it was former President Clinton. And I thought, yes, all right. He said, I got to talk to you about automobile tires. And I thought, it's like one of those things you think, how do you know you're awake? Maybe I'm dreaming, right? What are you talking about, sir, right? And he says, well, I got this guy in Malaysia. And I realized, no, I'm awake, because when you talk to President Clinton, he goes all over the map in one speech. I got this guy in Malaysia, and his father was a scientist, and he died. I said, I'm sorry to hear that, sir. And he said, but before he died, he invented this process, this chemical process. Now, I don't know if you ever talked to President, but the guy is the most brilliant intellect you ever want to run into. It's like, so when he describes to you the scientific process about delinking the hydrogen bonds, I'm thinking, oy gavalt. So because I did take science at Brown, but forget about it. I don't know what he's talking about. The point is, you pour this sauce on a tire, this magic Malaysian sauce on a tire, and I'm putting this in Timberland terms, and the net is the thing falls apart. And when it falls apart, you put it into another machine like Play-Doh, you turn the crank, and out comes usable rubber. Wow, that's pretty cool. I said, that took 15 minutes, mind you. But I said, yes, sir. And what would you like me to do? He said, he's going to call you in the next 5 minutes. And I said, okay, great. And you should take that rubber and put it on the bottom of Timberland shoes. I said, Okay, how would you say no? So I go, yes, sir, fine. I figured this is going to cost $10 trillion to put one little rubber sole on. I'll jump to the end. The Malaysian guy is nuttier than I am, and that is an effort, right, of intellectual superiority. The guy goes a million miles an hour. I know more. I do different things than him, but he's amazing. And the bottom line is, it's not a joke. It's real. And so he has a company called Green Rubber, and he's going around taking tires out of the landfill, putting on Dad's secret sauce, Kivud Ava Aim, because he's big about this, and out comes perfectly good rubber. Costs less to make recycled rubber out of tires than to make virgin rubber come out of trees. Makes sense, right? Because governments will pay you to take the tires out of landfill. Wait a second. Commerce and justice. I can get high quality, high performance, environmentally much better rubber for a Timberland shoe. By the way, looks like rubber, feels like rubber, works like rubber. It is rubber, right? Only it's infinitely recyclable. It's called green rubber, and it costs less than regular rubber. An example of earth keeping. That's the idea of put pressure on the system, and the private enterprise will innovate. Okay, Earthkeeper products is recycled content that we've switched out. You don't know a lot about shoes, many of you, but it's interesting. I'm wearing a relatively high-brow pair of Timberland shoes today because this is a New York audience after all. So I put on these are fancy high-end Timberland things. And so so you look at this and you ask yourself, oh, this is okay. As long as I got a podium, you can't see my sock. That's fine. You ask yourself, how many pieces go into making a pair of shoes? You know, as consumers, we've completely lost track of what it takes to do anything. Right? When's the last time you actually sewed something or actually built something? Or, you know, if you ever saw a chicken shechted, it's just an interesting experience. They don't grow up shrunk wrapped in the supermarket, right? And so a shoe is pieces that get stuck together by human hands. And depending on what kind of design ethic you have, like if anybody's wearing a pair of athletic shoes, the design ethic is small pieces of colored contrast. And if you decompose small pieces of colored contrast, you find glue everywhere. Now, you've never been on the assembly line with me in China. Long, straight lines. It looks like what Empire Chicken looks like. Everybody's in a white uniform. They're Chinese, not Jewish, but anyways, there you go. And they're not slaughtering chickens. Some of them are killing themselves. They don't realize it. Take a deep breath. That ain't good, right? Volatile organic compounds are principally what are used as the base of adhesives in the fashion industry. Now, the guy who's made the hugest progress, now that's not English, the most progress on this issue of eliminating VOCs in face of water-based adhesives is the evil empire in Portland. Nike's been the leader in eliminating eliminating VOCs in favor of WBA, water-based adhesives. By the way, it makes sense, right? All the substrate does is anchor the chemicals. So why do you use volatile organic compounds? Well, it's cheaper and they're more effective. It's not good if you're sitting on the line breathing them. Right? Oh, who cares? It's Chinese people. And we don't know their names anyways. And we're not accountable for that. I got to make this quarter's profit. Have you noticed how difficult the economy is? And besides, nobody knows. Right? And we comply with all local labor law. Right? Because the Chinese law says this is what you have to do, and we do it. What else is a CEO responsible for, right? And if I tell you that we spend all this money to replace VOCs with water-based adhesives, you'll pay more for the shoe, won't you? Oh, you won't, huh? Well, but it's better for the economy. It's better for the environment. It's better in terms of justice. And they say, yeah, I know, but first of all, your shoe ain't that good looking, and it's a little overpriced, and you don't have a size 9. So I mean well, but I'm buying theirs, not yours. Earthkeeping is the assertion and the insistence that even in the context of economic crisis, there is absolutely a way to bring the innovation of private sector thinking to bear so that you can take out the volatile organic compounds, you can insist that there be safe working conditions, you can insist that the people on the line work a manageable, sustainable number of hours. Timberland's Code of Conduct says no one works more than 60 hours a week ever, period. Every competitive code in our industry, every one, says 60 hours except at times of peak manufacturing. Every one. Now, what do you think that's like? Anybody here a Talmudist? Yeah, everybody here is. So when it says 60 hours except at peak times, the question we would ask is, what's the definition of a peak time and who gets to define it? Would it shock you that 11 months out of 12 is defined as peak time by some of our competitors? Timberland has more labor violations, self-reported labor violations for working hours by an order of magnitude than the sum of our competitors. How's that for math? Timberland, 10 competitors, you take the sum of theirs, labor violations, and compared to ours, we have an order of magnitude more than theirs because 60 hours in 1 minute is a violation of standard. We pay more as a result. We pay more as a result. Of course, it's okay if I charge more for the shoe, right? Oh no, that's right, you told me. You won't pay more for the shoe. And so what do we do about that? How do we figure out how to do that? We figure out how to design a shoe simpler than they do. We bring in origami people at Timberland to show us how to make a shoe without adhesives. We bring in people to find a way to do it with fewer pieces, period. Fewer pieces, lower cost. Lower carbon footprint, simpler design, easier to execute, more respectful of the dignity of the people who make it, more respectful of the environment in which it's supposed to be. And I'm getting $300 a pair for these at Barney's, mind you, thank you very much. This is just one of those self-indulgent elite things at Timberland, but I got to have a little bit of fun in my life, and so there it is. I hope I'm making my point. I don't know if I am. We'll find out. Earthkeeping is a lonely passion, meaning it's not the norm in our university, but it can't be a solitary exercise. I talked to you about what's Bill Clinton got to do with Timberland strategy? In this narrow sense, too much, but there it is. Earthkeeping means collaborating with awkward others, from the government to NGOs and to competitors. Here comes my big crack at the slide thing. Here, let's see. I got the sequence. Push this button. Oh, that's just awesome. Yep. So easy that even a CEO can do it. You're going to love that. So what is this? This is an example of inviting pressure. Pressure to seek innovation, right? Nobody here buys food without a hechsher, right? That's one form of labeling. Further, nobody buys food without a nutrition label because we've got to know how many trans fats and transitive fats and how many calories, all that stuff, right? That is the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, says you can't sell food unless you disclose content. In the fashion industry, there's no such disclosure. Nike spent 10 years telling activists that we won't tell you where our factories are located. This to me was one of the great pill pool examples in the history of humankind. Activist says, tell us where the factories are. Nike says, no. Activist says, you must, won't, you must, you won't. And I thought, so then they came to Timberland and they said, what do you think about that? I said, here's the names of the factories. And the Nike guys laughed. Because, let me ask you a question. Factory that makes 10, 15, 20 million pairs of shoes. Big building, small building. Big honking building, right? It comes from China, right? North or south? South. Near the coast, not near the coast. On the coast, wound on. Everyone knows where it is. If the activists hadn't asked them the right questions, they wouldn't have said, like, tell us where your factory is. They would have gone there. It takes 30 seconds. You don't need Google Earth. In 30 seconds, you can find the factories. Just focus on all the wrong issues. So we decided we'd have a different conversation. I hate the French part, but that's the Canadian government insisting on it. There you go. So we have it in French too. This is the Timberland nutrition label. Our general counsel is a very short woman, but when I told her I was going to do this, literally her hair caught on fire. She said, you're going to go to jail. I said, why? She said, because it's not required, and we're going to tell people things that they'll misunderstand. And I said, you have to trust Amcha. Consumers will do the right thing always. If they have the information in a convenient way that doesn't compromise their experience, they always make the choice. Not most of the time, always, right? People's hearts are good. When people are buying products that are made with child labor, they don't explicitly know that they are. And if you give them a chance to see that, let's see, what does it say? Oh, this is the green index. Let's not give me the wrong one, but that's okay. So it doesn't say anything about child labor, does it? We're reading this together. Let's have fun. Oh, this is the green index, not the nutrition label, but it's the same idea. I put it on shoe boxes and told people, this is what it's like to pollute in the pursuit of profit. This is the consequence of what we do. Now, I'm not apologizing. I'm simply informing, because I believe consumers will make the right choice. Give them a sense of what you're doing, and first of all, they appreciate the fact that you are being at least modestly transparent, and further, they get a chance to make discriminating choices. This index that shows 0 is good means there's no carbon impact. 10 means, uh-oh, that ain't so good. By the way, our #1 selling product, the classic yellow boot, is an 8.5. And so does the road, right? It's on the box. And the reason is the midsole. The thing between what you stand on and what you lace up is made out of polyvinyl chloride, PVC. And that's an eyebrow one, right? The production of PVC in its original chemical process involves the word dioxin. And so, although the material is trapped in inert and safe per se, in use there's no threat in any context or form, In disposal, if you take this product and subject it to heat, you burn the boot, you release dioxin. Now, every regulatory body in the whole wide world says that's not a consumer threat or issue. But you buy that? I don't. And yet I'm sending out into the world boots with PVC midsoles still, because we haven't found a solution. We haven't. I don't have a green rubber solution. I don't have a water-based adhesive solution. I don't. There's plenty of other materials to use, except that the consumer won't have them, because it changes the aesthetic of the product substantially. We've tested it every way to Monday, and I don't have an answer for you. And that's why the German council said, you can't put this on the shoes, because then people will know. And I said to her, Danette, I love you. Best corporate sense, love you, right? But they have to know, right? And if Nike comes up with a boot as good looking as ours, at a better price without PVC, and they can show 2 instead of 8, we're going to go out of business. It's not jail I worry about, it's failure that I worry about. But jail would be actually a nice thing, on some levels, right? As long as I could choose the reading material. And there would be Coach, there's an argument that says that would be a nice break. I could use that for a while, right? But failing as a 3rd generation guy, that's a bad thing, right? You said some of your friends and colleagues are family business people. If you are associated, connected to part of the family business, the idea of blowing up 3 generations worth of your family's passion, life, struggle, it's not a trivial obligation to bear. So I don't want to sound like some dingling cowboy when we put this label on. It was very considered. Failure to me is not just an intellectual prospect. It's a deep notion with real family ties to it. Earthkeeping, no, let's see if I can do it. Oh, that's it, I'm done. There's only 2. Earthkeeping is a 3-dimensional thing. This is the second largest privately owned solar array in the state of California. It's also our distribution center. Now, we have in Ontario, California, I think it's 1 million square feet of shoes piled up. And it's Southern California, so you know the song, although you're way too young to know the song, it never rains in California. Anyways, it doesn't rain there. The Russian word is solnce. Every time I land in the Gulf Stream, and to be clear, yep, right, I am flying around in corporate aviation, so I am a sinner in that regard. Every time I land in the Gulf Stream in Ontario, all you can see as far as your eye goes is flat roofs, because everybody and his mother-in-law has a warehouse. This is a city that's built around warehouses, right? All the roofs are flat, usually white, energy-absorbing, energy-radiating buildings. Well, all we did with the state of California, so that's an example, you can't see, but that's another person's distribution center. We re-roofed the building with solar electricity, 60% of the energy. Now that powers every pair of Timberland shoes for the distribution center comes from the heavens above. And it was a smart investment, it was a bold investment. It will never pay off in short-term financial terms, but it absolutely pays off, especially if you connected to that label before, right? Because consumers start to see renewable energy as part of our story. They actually start to see the value of what they're buying includes less volatile chemicals in the world, more renewable energy, more thoughtful stuff. This other stuff, these are the Kukin Desert. I can't find it on a map. It's somewhere near Beijing. I was there the other day, and I still don't know where I was. But because when they say near Beijing, it could be 4 hours in the airplane. But anyways, what happened? China decided they needed space, so they cut down a forest. But I mean, they cut down a forest the size of California. And you know who got uptight about that? Japanese consumers, citizens, because the weather patterns changed in Tokyo. Dust storms coming down on the jet stream, because this turned to desert. So we've planted there since we started in 2001. I say to you proudly, I am not in that picture. I'm pretty clear, I think I'm not in that picture. We planted 750,000 trees to stop the desertification northwest of Beijing. Yep, that's a nice one. We could have a long conversation about collaborating with the Chinese government. So we could have an interesting conversation about that if you wanted to. Because all I'm trying to tell you in the context of living your principles in the external world is, I say humbly, you got to, and it ain't easy. There's the whole speech. We're almost done, right? But we are trying. We are trying in terms of rhythm. Yeah, enough of this. So can we turn the lights back on, Doris? Thank you very much. I don't know how to make the picture go away. We'll figure it out. Could I do the clicker? Oh, there it is. Let's see. Oh, somebody tell. No, you have to tell the boys that I did that all by myself, will you? Because they know I'm inept technologically. Look, Usually I conclude my speech right here. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I think it's really incredible about everything you're doing for justice. But how do you keep your company afloat? And you're expending so much money, and you said before it will never pay off in short-term financial terms. It's really an incredible. Do you want me to repeat that again?
No, I got it.
It's really an incredible sentiment to have, but like the fact is that financially it's near impossible, especially in weathering this storm.
Nope, it's not. It's not near impossible. It's just hard, wicked hard. That's a Boston phrase, wicked hard. But my whole thesis is, if you look at what's selling from Timberland right now, the number of the top 10 items last week in UK retailing, 7 of them were Earthkeeper items. 7 of them. My whole point is, if you operate, I have 2 points to make. One is, I can't help but operate from principle. I can't live otherwise. You can't either. And since you can't, then what you have to do is figure out how to operate from principle. And so that's why they pay you and me the big bucks, because we have to find a way to act in accordance with our principles and solve for the multiple stakeholders who have demands on us. And so I can go hug a tree. Yvon Chouinard is the founder of Patagonia, and he says, we're switching to organic cotton on Monday. I don't care what it has to do with gross margin. I told you that I'm not switching from PVC because I do care about the impact on gross margin. I will switch from PVC, please God. I just haven't figured out how to do that and maintain my profit margin. I told you that solar array costs $3.5 million. It will not pay off, but that's an abstract argument, right? My CEO friends say to me, what's the return on capital for that $3.5 million? I said, strong question, fellas. They say, why? I said, because I got $180 million of cash on the balance sheet, no debt. The question is not, on the margin, can I allocate $3 million of capital? That's just an analytical framework that says I don't want to work in terms of principles. I want an excuse not to live by my principles. And so I can tell you it'll take 33 years to pay off the capital that went into that thing. But that's the wrong question. Because it's not a capital asset model that said, I built a solar array and am I going to get my bucks back for it? Narrowly, in terms of cost of electricity. I tell you that investing in that solar array transforms the company from the inside out. It leads to green rubber. Why does President Clinton call and say, to me, not to Nike? Nike is much sexier, much more oomph, 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 oomph. And Maria Eitel, who just left Nike to run the Corporation National Service for the current administration, woman who had Nike Foundation, friend of mine for a long time. She, President Clinton, go back a lot further than even I and President Clinton go back. So, but he deliberately chose to call me. Did we get a return on the solar array for that? No, not deliberately, not directly, but it's connected. Your reputation's worth something. Right? Living your principles in a principled way, especially in economic crisis, is, I tell you, crisis doesn't build character, it reveals it. Who are you? What matters? Well, you know what matters? Family. Okay, then what are you doing here? I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to me. Because you have to be here, you're going to class, you're going to get grade. Right? I'm getting paid today whether I'm here, I'm in the office, or I'm home helping Debbie make chalot for Shabbat tonight. But I chose to be here. I chose to be here because this is my principles in action. Not telling you my story for the sake of me hearing it, telling you my story for the sake of having you worry about how do you make a profit and live according to, that's exactly the right question. And the answer is, oh well, here's how it's done. The pompous fool who says, here's how it's done, stop listening, right? Because I'm 25 years of doing this. Look, when I first started talking about this 25 years ago, commerce and justice, people threw things. They had to. Because if there was any truth to the story, right? If you're standing over here on this square and you're saying, no, I believe you can be responsible while you earn your profit. Everybody else over here, quoting Milton Friedman, he won a Nobel Prize for saying the business of business is to earn a profit. Anything else a CEO does is immoral. That's good cover. That's good cover. So I mean well, right? I wrote a check to United Way, and I'm not disparaging that. I'm just saying, I don't have to deal with this stuff. I comply with local Chinese labor law. If they worked 120 hours, the Chinese government's job is to say that. Who am I, a culturally insensitive American company, to say they should only work 60 hours? Who do you think you are? I answer to a different standard. You do too, right? That's why this visit, to me, was so important. It's not easy. Our results this year are, but we're going to earn 4 or 5% return on sales, not 10 or 12%. Our stock's at 17, not at 30. The pressure is extraordinary. And so there's a lot of conversation about cheaper. And a lot of conversation about, by cheaper, I don't mean just in price. I mean, 70 hours wouldn't be that big a deal, right? It wouldn't. Even if you only said 30 days, because by the way, our business has peaks, real peaks. Do you know how we cover those peaks to keep the 60 hours? We put it in inventory. If you're a shareholder, you say, why is your inventory balloon? So we put it in inventory, but the shareholder doesn't see it. You mean we hide it? No. We have to find a way to turn our inventory faster than they do. So we create this artificial pressure, but my point to you is it's not artificial. My point to you, what's the frame of pressure in your life? Is it the 90 days, right? The external Sarbanes-Oxley conversation? Well, in the context of this crowd, let me tell you, I usually don't go here, but here I go anyways. At Yeshiva University, we can tell each other not just what the Jew who is a CEO does in the face of economic crisis, because that's what we were just talking about, but we can remind ourselves why she does what she does. We can remind ourselves that when Hashem speaks to us in this week's Parshiot, His commandments are not framed in context of temporal economic context, they're framed in context of Hashem's wisdom, period. There's no conversation in Acharimot Kedoshim about when things are good, you should keep honest weights. And when things are bad, you should figure out how to kind of figure that out. With permission to the scholars, all of whom are more learned than me in the room, especially the Rebbeim, permit me these 5 minutes, and I'll keep it really short. As you read through Acharimot and Kedoshim, there's a syntax of powerful admonition that appears not less than 23 times in one variant or the other, Ani Hashem, or Ani Hashem Elokeichem, with one exception. And all the times this resounds through our Parshiot, one time the formula is written differently, as follows. Moznei tzedek, avnei tzedek, efa tzedek, v'hin tzedek yihyeh lechem, ani Hashem Elokeichem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. You shall have correct scales, correct stones for weights, a correct measure called an ephah, and a correct measure called a hin. I am Hashem your God who brought you forth from the land of Egypt. That's Vayikra 19:36. On the pasuk there, Rashi wonders why this one time in the repetition of this syntax, I am Ani Hashem, why this time is expanded. Rashi teaches Asher Seti Etchem al Menat Kain. Whoa! Al Menat Kain, on the condition that you will live your commerce with an eye towards justice, I will liberate you from the land of Egypt. And further, Rashi goes on. He said, don't think that once you were liberated on that condition, everything is okay. This is what answers the question that you asked, at least for me. He says, Rashi speaks in the name of Hashem. He says, Va'ani ha'ne'aman l'hipara mimi shetomein mishkalotav b'melech l'chonot et habriot she'ein makirim bachem. Rashi says, I am the one, Hashem is the one who can be trusted. Count on the fact that I, Hashem, will exact punishment from one who stores his weights in salt to cheat the people who do not know about this. You want to know why I have a green index that I publish on the shoebox that tells people where we pollute and the things we do wrong? Because I am mindful of the Torah stricture that says you may be able to hide it from the activists, but you cannot hide as a Jew before Hashem for the choices that you make. Now, I can promise you, in the history of speech making, and I do a lot of it, I ain't never said that before. I may have told the boys about it, but I, in general, keep that out of audience conversations. And I'm not being glib, I'm just telling you that's why this is an important visit for me. If you look at Bava Metzia, on Daf 61b, there you'll see Rashi explaining that the issue about salting your weights is that the buyer would be advantaged. If you look at the Tosfot in Bava Batra, on the Daf 89b, there Tosfot and Rabbeinu Tam have a conversation about salted weights favoring the seller. I love this machloket. They're both worried. One's worried about the buyer, one's worried about the seller. You step back. You take the pasuk and you take those two little sugyas in the Gemara, and the Midrash is clear as crystal can be. Commerce and justice is a fundamental Jewish notion. It's a religious halachic stricture that as the CEOs that you're going to be, whether it's in your family business, whether it's going to be the CEO as an accountant, whether you're going to be a CEO as a salesperson, it doesn't matter what your title is, but you're going to be a Jew doing something in the world of commerce and justice. And to me, it comes right down to as simple as Rambam's language in Yesodei HaTorah. He says very clearly, there's two paths. There's Chil Hashem, there's Kiddush Hashem, and he uses commerce language in both cases. And in terms of defining Kiddush Hashem, he says it's Yesodei HaTorah, it's Perek Hey, it's Halach Yud Aleph. He says, it's a long explanation, 10 words about what you do wrong. Chil Hashem as a businessman is someone who sells something, doesn't pay for it, even though you had the money, you exploit the weak. That's why you can't let people work 70 hours, because you can. The very fact that you have the power to exploit the weak, which is exactly what the CEO has.
The Rambam brings these words to say, don't. It's a chilul Hashem if you do that. He didn't say it's easy. He didn't say, don't worry, you'll make a profit. He says, don't, but that's the wrong question, right? Because you could make a better 90-day profit. I could. The costs of environmentalism and human rights and citizen service are real. The benefits are more abstract and longer term. And so in a 90-day frame, there's no question I could make more money. Rambam says, go ahead, trade earnings in the quarter for the standard of chilul Hashem, if you'd like. Now, it's pretty hyperbolic, right? But then look at the language he uses to describe what you're supposed to do.
If you're going to be a Kiddush Hashem, he says, v'nosei v'notein be'emuna. Thanks, that's helpful. Do your buying and your selling be'emunah. That's not a really simple promise. Neither is it a roadmap in a practical term, or is it a promise that everything will work out. It's just an admonition that says, this is what you got to do. As we pursue our business careers, no matter the challenges we face, may we remember that Hashem took us out of Egypt al manat, our commitment to commerce and justice, and that Hashem will judge us by what we do, not what we say, no matter the challenges of the moment.
May we be zocher to rise to the standard of Kiddush Hashem by doing our business, whatever it is, with emunah. That's why I came to Yeshiva University to visit with you, to tell you that that's the challenge, not of the CEO, that's the challenge of the Jew, whether he or she is a CEO or a salesman. That's the question that you ask, that's the struggle that we have to interrogate. Anyways, that's what I had to say. I hope you have hard questions like that one. I hope you have hard points to make, and I hope we're out of time so you can't ask.
Ah, we got plenty of time.